So, good afternoon. Thank you for very kind words about me. Is the microphone is on? Do you hear me good? Do you see me very good? Unfortunately, I don't see very good. So,
We are changing the slides one second.
okay. So, I have a severe visual impairment. So, I'm not telling you because I want you that you feel pity, but just if you raise your hand and I don't see that, you should just be aware of that. Agree? Okay. Secondly, the second question, if you prefer to have about 20 or 30 very fancy organized PowerPoint presentation, or do you want me to entertain you? Okay, both. Unfortunately, I don't have too many slides, but I do my best. Just a short overview of my presentation. So this work is not final. What I'm presenting here, still ongoing, I'm work in progress. So I will give you first an introduction. I will talk about assistive technologies. I will talk about the goal of the UNESCO inquiry, and I will make some demonstration on the MOW International Register website in terms of accessibility. And I will also show you two examples of two entries on the Memory of World Register in terms of accessibility again. And I would be very happy to have your feedbacks at the end of this presentation, or you can email me after the event. So, by the way, I heard very often this morning the term accessibility. The term accessibility in our field is a little bit is understood differently. It's about providing mechanism for people with disabilities to access the environment, physical environment or digital environment. But maybe there's another aspect of accessibility, but what I'm interested in talking about that. So, since 2006, there is a United Nations Convention on the Right of People with Disabilities, and there are a lot of areas which were relevant for this convention: culture, education, mobility, transport, and all other important areas for living of people with disabilities. So according to the UNCRPD, UN Convention on the Right of People with Disabilities, people with disabilities should have equal access to the cultural, they should enjoy, participate in cultural events or cultural whatever other human beings also enjoy. And there's also a human right, there's a human right declaration, and culture is an important part of it, independent of having a disability or not. So I was asked from the UNESCO office to create kind of guidelines for accessible documentary heritage for people who have kind of deficiencies. To create a document, create guidelines or recommendations, I would say, which can be used by people working in museum, people working as a curator, as whatever kind of jobs you guys have in this area. So that was the idea, that was the original idea on that. I have been working on this topic partially in recent 2-3 months. So I thought it would be an opportunity here to present the result, the current result, they're not final, and have your feedback here. Just to understand how people with different disabilities work, what kind of technologies exist, I use the term assistive technologies. Assistive technologies are, in our context, in the technical context, are soft or hardware-based solutions to help people with disabilities or elderly persons to overcome or eliminate their barriers in their daily life or daily job or whatever they do. We are not considering here, we are not talking about other kind of assistive technologies. A blind cane is also kind of assistive technology, but it's not, the topic of cane is not relevant for this area. We are talking about hard and software-based solutions. So you see here different kind of assistive technologies like eye tracking software. People who cannot use their hand or fingers to control the mouse to work with a computer, they can control the computer using eye tracking software. Or magnification software, these are used for people with visual impairment to magnify the content of the screen in a very large fonts in a way that they can change the background color, they can change the shape of the mouse, they can change, they can define kind of magnifying glasses on the screen and enlarge the information behind these lenses. There are other kind of technologies. If you remember Stephen Hawking, the famous British physicist, he also used kind of assistive technologies. He was a genius person, but he could use, without his assistive technologies, he wasn't able to work, to promote, to communicate his idea with us. So all these are examples of computer-based assistive technologies. There are much more and more, but I'm not going to talk about it. That's a lecture at university. The whole semester I could talk about different technologies about this, so that you can get an idea. So in order for you to understand, for me, for instance, I have my visual impairment since age of 15 through an accident. Before I had a normal vision, but these days I only have a very small vision of, so that's why I have to use assistive technologies. I want to make a demo to show you how it works and then bring it in connection with the topic we are talking here. So I hope that the loudspeaker works. You are not scared? That's my screen reader software. It's called JAWS. That's a screen, that's kind of assistive technologies. So it reads the information aloud on the screen to me. I can control the computer using the keyboard. I'm not able to use the mouse. So I can, for instance, So you can read the information aloud, letter by letter, word by word, line by line, or the whole paragraph, or the whole screen.
Selected. Hello, are you doing the question? Really? Cool. Selected. Very good.
So when sometimes there's nobody around me, I can talk a little bit to him and enjoy the life. So I can also go to the menu. Is it too slow for you to listen? Or is it too fast? Too fast. Yeah, you can make it a little bit slower, but for because my ears are very used to it, so it would be very slow, I couldn't work really. But for you, I assume that. But so I can also browse the computer. Okay, so this software helps me to read the information aloud. Without this software, I wouldn't be able to work. I used magnification software for some years ago, but I'm not able to use it anymore because it makes my eyes very tired. So imagine when you have this kind of information and you want to access digitized, let's say, documentary heritage information. That's why I examined the MOW Register International using my screen reader, and I want to share this knowledge with you. I hope I have internet access. So I hope. Okay. Please shut up. Sorry, I wasn't with you. So the idea, there is a topic called web accessibility. It means equal access to the websites, to web pages for people with disabilities using assistive technologies. Or imagine if you are colorblind. Imagine if you are not able to use the mouse. You're only able to use the keyboard. So all these topics are within the subject of web accessibility. So when I open a website, I'm not going to read the information line by line. It would make me crazy. I would have to have millions of years to read the web pages. So the first information, I mean, when you look at the web page, you see visually there are different sections of the web page. You have a banner area, you have a navigation area, you have a content area, you have a footer area, and all these things. If the website was designed with accessibility in mind, so you can formally define these areas in HTML. That's a programming language, you define the web pages. So I have the possibility to ask my screen reader software, please give me the different areas defined on this web page. Let's try. So I see there is a banner area. Within that, there's a navigation area. There is another navigation. That's it. So the idea is, when I knew I'm interested in reading the navigation area, I can press enter, and the screen reader software would go there and read the information aloud from there. Is it understandable? Okay? But there are much more areas on this web page which are not defined formally. For instance, you can define the region, they call it region. I mean, this different part of the web page. You have a language region, you have different languages, Arabic, German, English, and so that's not defined. In addition, it's not mentioned which area is the main navigation, which area is the side navigation. So there's no differentiation between them. There is no information about, for instance, search region. So this could be improved by defining these areas when you design the web page. In addition, I have the possibility to check the link text of defined on this web page. So there's all the link text defined on this web page. So it helps me to navigate the web page. But some places, there are some information which are not unique. For instance, there is home. There are 2 or 3 homes. I don't know who home of what. My home, your home, or UNESCO home. Sorry. Would you understand when you listen to this text where this link goes? I ask you. No. So I have no chance to check in advance. If I enter this web page, if I click on this link, which page would appear? Does it help you to hear plus or minus? That's the link text. So apparently there are some accessibility issues on this web page, could be improved. Another possibility is if you have some form fields defined on this web page, I can ask my software, please give me the form, the labels for the form field. Let's try. Select truck. Would you understand that? So you have no chance to understand what is good for this label, this form field. In addition, there are some labels defined, select the organization, which they should be actually an interactive element, but when you click on them, it doesn't happen anything. So this contract just is used to make a visual presentation. It is nothing behind it. Or I can ask, there are many pictures here on this web page. And when you are defining a web page, you can define so-called alternative text for screen reader users. So when a software comes to a picture, if there is alternative text defined, then the screen reader software reads the alternative text to me. Let's try to see the list of alternative text defined on this web page. Would you understand these things as alternative text? You get crazy. So it shows there are some other issues. So another last issues which I want to show here, some people are not able to use, for instance, mouse. They use the tab key to navigate on the web page. I press tab. You see I am in this world map, and there are some countries on it. Depending how many items these countries they have on the International Documentary Heritage web page, there are some arrow signatures. And I asked my assistant to check if it's really usable. You really can read which country. Can you read which countries I'm moving? You know how I move around the map? No? So even there's another issue. Normally when you press a tab key on a website, you should see a visual focus, a focus ring around the element so you know where you are. So if some people use magnification software and they don't see this focus ring, they're not able to use the web page. So if you have more questions, maybe later. But that was a short
PowerPoint slideshow mashup. PowerPoint slideshow mashup.
Okay.
Avoid talk.
That was some issues. Shut up, please. Sorry. Okay. It was this web page. You see the screen reader software. And it was also another issues. I didn't talk usability issues. There's a mosaic picture on the web page. It covers most of the information on the website. But that's a topic we could talk a longer time on it. Here, two examples of the content of World Memory Register International. There are some contents which are entries. You can access this information on the web page. I have one here, Dervini Papyrus. And when you see the information here, you see a gallery of some pictures, a fraction of all texts. And the information are not provided, for instance, for a visually impaired person, so you can imagine what's behind this information. For instance, you have no idea that this fragment of text is a part of a scroll. So you could improve the accessibility of this web page when you could describe the content and the form of the items. Here, for instance, you don't see the form, you don't have enough textual information. Visually, if you observe the gallery, maybe you understand that's part of a scroll. But otherwise, you don't have the chance. And for a visually impaired person who is only able to read the textual information, or somebody having a cognitive disability, it's difficult to understand what is about this item. Another example is a Korean, we are in Korea, is a Korean Confucian printing wood blocks. There are over 1,000 of these items, and you see on the Memory of Word International Register also a gallery of pictures. There are thumbnails. And as I said, when you describe information, you should provide information about the content and the form. And you don't receive information about the shape, about the size, about the shape that, for instance, on each of these wood blocks, you have some kind of handles on both sides, and you don't have information where these items in buildings where they are held. What kind of building is it? And all this information are missing. So it was just two examples, short examples to show you the problems that somebody who is able to read information in textual form, what kind of barriers you face. Here are some basic requirements. So involve or allocate enough resources for accessibility. Accessibility is the area that I'm talking about here. In advance, if you plan a project, involve people with disabilities because they are subject matters. Involve subject matter experts so they can describe these texts for these entries. Use simple language. You know, simple language is good for all. If you have a cognitive disability, if you're talking another language, so it's always useful to describe information in a simple language. There are also some tools in English to convert complex sentences into simpler sentences, but there's always a human being is always better to check all this information. Make your platform, your digital platform, accessible. There are international guidelines in the area of accessibility called Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. I didn't talk about them, but they are very important if you design a platform. So you can make sure that this platform, these websites, are accessible to people who have some kind of disabilities or deficiencies. Another technical guidelines which have a list here are, for instance, make your document, PDF document, accessible for visually impaired users. There are some standards how you can make PDF accessible. I didn't talk about them, but I checked the nomination forms, for instance, on the Memory of Birth International Register. None of them were accessible for a person with disability, with a visual impairment, for instance. And other guidelines here using captioning. That's very important for people who are deaf or they don't speak the native language, so they can use captioning. There are open captioning and closed captioning. There's some differentiation. Use transcription if you offer audio files on your websites. And some other kind of guidelines, what you see here, and we don't have time to talk about all of them. So if you have any feedback, it was really a very short draft of my work. If you have any feedback, any input, I would be very happy to receive them and include them in the final document. Thank you for your presentation, for your attention.